News of Alberta's referendum question this coming fall has rattled the province's most populous city. The day after Premier Danielle Smith's soft referendum announcement, Calgary's mayor, Jeromy Farkas, expressed his concern for what separatist rhetoric could mean for his city's growth.
It's something that our city has seen before and our country has seen before. Montreal used to share many of the benefits that Calgary has today: optimism, ambition, and a global reputation and generational growth. But all of that changed over two bitter and divisive debates over separation. Major companies moved head offices, and billions of investments left the province of Quebec because of prolonged uncertainty.
Deborah Yedlin is the president and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and she joins me now. Deborah Yedlin, it's good to see you again. Thank you for your time today.
Appreciate you having me today.
You were moving in a direction that you seem quite happy with in relations between the federal and provincial government, and now this. What is the business community's views on the possibility of this referendum coming in the fall?
Well, the concern, of course, is that what does this do for investment certainty in the province? We know that, we have big projects that we want to move forward with, whether it is the Pathways Alliance, the building of another pipeline, increasing production to fill that pipeline. We need to attract capital to do that. I mean, the energy sector in Canada has been built using and by attracting foreign capital, investors supporting the growth plans of the companies. And now this adds a layer of uncertainty of what could happen. When we need to attract capital to the country, broadly speaking, this element of uncertainty is absolutely not what we need right now.
So what does this do then for business investment? Like, I look at this and I wonder who is going to put billions on the table to put pipe in the ground now that separatism is on the ballot?
David, you're absolutely right. When you think about the numbers, $30 billion or $40 billion to build a pipeline to the West Coast, and then something in the order of $100 billion or more to increase production over decades to fill that pipeline. That means you have long cycle capital that you have to invest in, you have to attract, and you have to invest as a company. You want certainty. And this introduces an element of uncertainty that we know can be very harmful. When you look at the UK case, 18% investment fled the UK after Brexit. We don't need that. We actually need to attract capital, not scare it away.
Yeah, and you've seen some analysis on what's happened with Britain, that their economy has shrunk by 6 to 8% of GDP, which is leads to no shortage of social and economic problems as you move forward. But moving forward on the calendar, Deborah, like July 1 is the deadline for an application for a proponent for the pipeline. October 1 is the deadline for the national government to have it designated a project of national interest. The referendum's not until 18 days later, on October 19th. So people have to lock in and commit to things before they even know how this vote is going to go.
Well, I think that, the process on the pipeline is it will be submitted. The government has to decide federally if it is a project in the national interest, and then it will go forward from there. Initially, the Alberta government is going to be the proponent of the pipeline. That was pretty clear in the MOU. But the reality is you need private sector players to be part of this process. And for them to be able to do that, they need some certainty and policy durability that will contribute to their commitment to risk that long-term capital at an investment rate that generates a return on investment, makes sure that they can still pay dividends to their shareholders and continue to grow their company.
Right. So on that, and look, I'm not saying Enbridge is going to be the proponent, but we've seen a shift in what Enbridge's public comments have been. It's gone from a hard no to, I wouldn't say it's a hard no, to, we definitely look at it, right, if there's enough, certainty there. So things were moving towards at least high levels of interest from private sector proponents. What does all of this do to that dynamic in your view?
Well, it throws it back into the uncertain bucket. And, when you think about it broadly speaking, we're looking at sort of three buckets that could affect what will happen in this province. It's an issue of labor attraction, it's an issue of economic growth, and it's an issue of investment. And so anything that sort of sidelines an investment thesis or opportunity means that when you finally do get to it, it's probably more expensive. And the timeline has also been pushed out, neither of which are cheap. Time is money. We know that.
We've seen the argument coming from the pro-independence, pro-separatism crowd saying that essentially an independent Alberta which would be at the end of a very long process, to be clear. They can sort of bypass and replace a lot of the federal policy frameworks that they say are causing regulatory burdens and a logjam that's getting in the way. How would that square with the fact that you would have foreign borders on every side of the province? How do you make that work as a business opportunity?
Again, it's very uncertain. And I think we go back to when Scotland had a referendum in front of it. The reality was exposed that they didn't have any arrangements in terms of how they would continue to trade, what it would look like with the European Union. European Union said, no, thanks. And I think that when you look at it from that standpoint, all of a sudden you have provinces stranded on either side of Alberta, whether it's BC or Saskatchewan. And you think about it in the context of what we look at as a country versus a province. We're the 8th largest economy in the world. We'd be the 125th largest economy in the world. We would have to fund everything from defense to, diplomatic services. Everything would become more expensive and very complicated and would take time.
It'd be tough to get oil to the Pacific when you're going through a foreign country. I mean, it's already difficult. I understand the frustration that's out there when it's another province, but there's at least a shared incentive with the federal government's role in the current dynamic that would not exist for an independent Alberta, right? Like what you would have to pay a rent or a tariff or something, and BC may not want to accept the environmental risk.
Well, that might happen regardless. We may have a different conversation on that no matter what. But having said that, you want to be able to build that infrastructure and put whatever you want, the oil or the natural gas through it. You want to make sure that you can make a rate of return. And if it becomes more expensive, it's harder to do. It's harder to justify because we're already far from markets. We want to make sure that we have a transportation system that is actually economic in terms of being able to sell our product at a reasonable price to whoever wants to buy it in other parts of the world. And we know that that's exactly where we are right now as a planet. Everybody wants what Alberta has. They want our energy, they want our agriculture, they want what Canada has. And we need to make sure that we can have the infrastructure built and get our products to new markets. And that's really what the MOU is about. We've made so much progress with the federal government in terms of addressing the issues that were causing a lot of challenges. No question the last 10 years have been really challenging, but now we're moving forward. And that's why this is not something that is helpful at the moment.
Look, I don't know if there's an argument the Prime Minister, the Premier, you, anybody else can make that's going to convince hardcore separatists of the correct path is to stay in Canada. But there's a lot of people who are open to voting for it, at least as a leverage play, or are willing to voice a frustration with the status quo and look at the ballot box as their opportunity to do that. The Prime Minister warned against that, saying that it's not a consequence thing, calling it a consequence-free thing, saying it's a dangerous bluff if people tell you you can do this and there won't be a price to pay. And he pointed to Brexit on that. What does the business community do between now and October to weigh into this debate? And what do you think the people of Alberta need to hear from the federal government that their concerns have been heard and things will be different?
Well, I think people will be looking at how the process unfolds with regard to the pipeline proposal, the continued progress on the MOU, but certainly people are very, very live to what this means. I don't think you're going to change the mind of the hardcore separatist. What concerns me more are the people who still think that they need to vote yes to send a message to Ottawa and this will act as leverage. We have sent a message to Ottawa. We have moved forward since November of last year to have that MOU signed. Had that not happened, we'd be having a different conversation today, David. And so that's why I think we have to take a pause and recognize how far we've come, where we're going, and that we are better together as a country with Alberta within Canada than we are without. This is not a reason to break up the country. And you'll see that an initiative today was launched with Ken Bosenkohl called Alberta Staying, Not Leaving. And it includes people like Travis Tays, former finance minister, Jim Dinning, former finance minister. And there are people who are now starting to stand up and say, no, this is not what we stand for. And we want to make sure that Alberta stays within Confederation.
Deborah Yedlin with the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate your time as always. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.